I actually don't even own dollars anymore. I only own Bitcoin, so I have to spend it because it's the only money I own. I have credit cards and I spend on those. And
Right.
then when I need to pay those down, I sell the Bitcoin to pay them off. I do bill pay with Bitcoin. But in that way, I'm borrowing the currency that only goes down. So I get to spend it without ever needing to hold it. And I hoard the currency that averages going up 50 to 100% year over year. So everything around me gets 50 to 100% cheaper year over year, right? It gets a half off every single year. And I spend on a credit line of the currency that's getting actively debased by my government. So I'm just running a short trade all the way down to the penny.
Highlights an amazing strategy, which you're already doing and I need to be doing more of, but also why not be doing that in gold for people viewing who haven't started? And that's exactly what
Well, I think the point is that any fiat currencies are utter trash. Like they're backed by nothing. There's no limit to how much currency governments can print, and they will print it because the debt levels are out of control all over the world. There's nothing else that governments can do other than continue to print money. It's,
mm,
it's inflate or die. That's what that's the position the central banks are in. They have to
mm,
inflate the currency or the whole system goes under.
yeah,
And inflating the currency, printing more money. So it's a little bit like trying to cure a heroin addict by continually injecting them with more heroin. I mean,
yeah,
eventually the patient is going to die. And the same is true of central banks continually printing more currency, because every time you print currency, the existing currency in circulation loses value. So the more you print, the more you guarantee that that currency will ultimately go to zero.
yeah,
And every fiat currency in the history of the world, every paper money has eventually gone to a value lower than the value of the paper that it's printed on.
mm,
And dollars, euros, etc., will be no different. You can see pictures online now of Venezuela, Zimbabwe, and so on of rubbish tips with banknotes.
yeah.
They're worth zero. And that is fiat money. Why does the confidence still exist in fiat money to use it at all? That's an interesting question, and it is just confidence, because as soon as the confidence goes, it can worth zero very, very, very quickly.
Yeah, and Bitcoin's confidence as well. I mean, that's the point for later. But a great question. I mean, I think I've asked you this once before, but also we had it from a person who commented on the last video. Is if you were the president or whatever, how would you solve this problem? And I think what we've been constantly saying is there are ways, and we can go into that, but actually it's just much simpler. You're not going to be the president, so it's much simpler to set yourself up in this kind of way. Plus, I think you even admitted off camera that if you were president, you'd be tempted to keep going along with it as well, which I
Yeah,
thought was
yeah,
amusing.
because imagine all the people that you're going to have surrounding you in that position.
Yeah,
The whole power of the government is based on the ability, or the two things: the ability to print new currency units and the ability to borrow unlimited amounts of money. Without that, you have no power. So if you're suddenly in that position of president and you want to continue the system, to continue your personal power, then you ultimately have to be dishonest,
yeah,
and you ultimately have to continue the way that it is, or else you lose all your power. Of course, but what we're saying is, look, it doesn't matter a damn who's president. Just
mm,
ignore all that bullshit, because it is bullshit, and create your own wealth and
yeah,
create your own systems to avoid these big government systems. So don't use
yeah.
fiat money for any more than you have to use it. You find other ways to be in hard assets, be in crypto, or whatever it is that you like, that's better than government issued currency units.
Yeah,
So
and just adding to that, I mean, even this idea of if you were president, you would be tempted to continue with the power that you have, etc. And also, like you said, these people are never going to change anything. They're run by bureaucrats behind the scenes. And even when you hear great things from someone who is trying to implement things, even Trump has tried to implement things, but he's also done the opposite on a lot of stuff. But he's always got people behind the scenes advising him, like the person you told us about in a previous video who Elon called like, dumber than a sack of bricks. All these
mm.
people behind the scenes are just messing with stuff, even if the person did have good intentions to begin with. So you
Well,
kind of
well,
just
I think,
focus
I
on
mean,
the person.
probably most people will disagree with me in this, but I think anyone that gets into politics does not have good intentions.
Yeah.
So I would disagree that anyone involved in politics, left wing, right wing,
Mm.
libertarian, whatever they say they are, anyone that wants to have power over other people does not have good intentions.
Yeah, yeah.
That,
That's a
that,
very good
that,
point.
that to me is a fact, but I understand that most people will disagree. But that's my point of view, and I think I'm right.
Yeah.
But it's if you want to talk about it in the context of government should not be involved in the economy at all.
Yeah,
Government should not be issuing currencies. Governments should not be involved in money. They shouldn't be borrowing money. They shouldn't be issuing currencies.
yeah.
So the first thing you would do if you were an honest politician, which is a contradiction in terms because that doesn't exist,
Mm,
is you would get the government out of the economy. You
mm.
would default on the debt, and you would get back to using gold as money, or gold or whatever the population chose to use as money. So I personally think gold is the only valid form of money that's been money for 5,000 years and will be money for the next 5,000 years. So gold is tried and tested as money, and that's what money should be. And the government should not. The government can't conjure up new gold the same way it can't conjure up any tangible asset. It can't conjure up oil. It can't conjure up things that are produced in a factory. So the only thing it can make out of thin air is these currency units that people call money today, but they can't conjure up real things.
Yeah, yeah. And and these setups are in your control. And the great thing is, whilst, these billionaires and politicians are in control, they still set up ways because they do it themselves to protect themselves, which you can utilize, which we can utilize, whether that's, setting up with the gold, silver, hard assets, but also with tax havens and all sorts of that. And Trump was bragging about it in, his race against Hillary. She was criticizing him and he was saying, well, you guys set up the tax laws. I'm just using them in a legal way.
It,
So
it was a very good clip, and that
yeah,
kind of thing where you see the real Trump, as it were.
She complains that Donald Trump took advantage of the tax code. Well, why didn't she change it? Why didn't you change it when you were a senator? The reason you didn't is that all your friends take the same advantage that I do. And I do. You have provisions in the tax code that frankly we could change. But you wouldn't change it because all of these people give you the money so you can take negative ads on Donald Trump. And I say that about a lot of things. I've heard Hillary complaining about so many different things over the years. We should have done this. But she's been there for 30 years. She's been doing this stuff. She never changed, and she never will change.
He was being honest there. I use the tax rules not to pay tax, and
yeah,
of course everyone should do the same. No one should pay their
yeah,
this government theft that they call taxation. Nobody should pay. Everyone should find a way around it that they can do legally, and everyone should find a way not to use government issued money, and that is easy to do. You don't need to campaign for some government to go back to the gold standard, which is never going to happen
mm,
for the reasons that we spoke about earlier. You can have your own gold standard, and you can start it today.
yeah, exactly. That's exactly what we're saying. You can be in control of your life and your finances, and you don't have to rely on outside things, which is great, And even it was funny in that clip with Trump and Hillary, he then was pointing at her and saying, this is exactly what you, but specifically your donors are doing, because you've set it up so that your donors can, be okay and keep supporting your campaign. And we're just going to utilize the exact same methods they do, and we're not doing anything illegal, thanks to the fact that you're so desperate yourselves to not pay tax yourselves.
Of course, of course, the way that these politically connected people, whether the businesses or politicians, get rich is that they are the first people to use the newly printed money before it gets into the system
Yeah,
and inflates everybody else's money to lose value. They're able to go and buy hard assets
yeah,
with these currency units before it filters down to the common people, which can take several months for that to happen.
yeah.
So
And there's a great clip of that. Them in cahoots with the banks, and then the banks saying, "Oh yeah, we won't take anything from you," but and then they say, "How are you going to pay us interest?" And they look towards the citizens, and then they just laugh at each other because basically this
yes.
is way behind them.
I'd encourage everyone to create their own personal gold standard if you want. If you're more of a crypto person, set up your own Bitcoin standard. I'd say it's more risky, but okay, if you want to do that, go ahead. But set up your gold standard, have your savings in gold, and use, if you're always going to have things you have to pay for in government issued currency. If you've got a mortgage to pay, if you've got rent to pay, or whatever, you're gonna have to use fiat currencies for that. But you can even use short term borrowings or a credit card to do these things, and then just sell your gold or crypto to pay off the balance. So you can keep, as we've said in this channel before, keep 3 or 6 months worth of expenses in fiat currency in a bank account.
Yeah, yeah. It's a really, really good point, and that leads nicely onto the, how to do the transaction, the use of credit cards. There's two great things there. Exactly what you said. You can basically, if you're going to hold dollars or whatever, you're going to hold it for very, seconds. You're going to be transferring that, making the exchange, and then paying. But also the use of credit cards, zero interest credit cards at the end of the month, and then paying off those credit cards. So you're using the credit cards to do all your purchases, and you're not even holding any dollars. And then at the
Yes.
end of the month, you do a quick transfer, pay off the credit card. That was milliseconds or seconds that you might
That's right.
pay any dollars
Because you
for.
probably if you use an Amex card or whatever that you've got to pay off
Points,
the balance, then
exactly. Yeah, you get
you've
free
probably
points.
got, I don't know, 45 to 60 days before you have to pay it. If you go and buy something today with your Amex
Yeah,
card, you've probably got 45 days before you have to actually pay the bill, and and then you're taking advantage of the
point
currency
system.
that's losing value all the time, and then you're just
Yeah,
converting your gold or your whatever hard asset you choose into fiat currency to pay off
yeah.
the card balance every month.
Yeah, and I was suggesting a trip to Miami for us both. I mean, I think you've probably already got a lot of this set up, but I desperately want some Chase or Amex cards because then I could basically be doing this strategy and then getting extra points because they're the most rewarding in points for flights, for hotels, and then having a luxury lifestyle to some of these credit cards as well. I think everyone should be aiming to get towards that, and you know that you're not even necessarily got any money in the bank there. You're just using them as a credit card and paying them off.
Yeah,
So you're just using the
it's certainly if you've
services.
got high monthly expenses, it's definitely doing that as an added benefit of using cards as a way to use the financial system to your benefit rather
Yeah.
than against you, which you use against you if you're sitting with large amounts of money in a bank account that's losing value on a day by day basis.
Yeah, exactly. So we've listed why it's all terrible. The system actually, you know, they're corrupt. There's bureaucrats behind the scenes, but they've set up legal ways for you to use, you know, tax havens, offshore companies for asset protection. We could go a little bit more onto that, and then we were touching, you know, on hard assets, you know, like gold, silver. You know, even I don't know, platinum's quite, you know, doesn't really move much, but there's a whole host of things you could use. It could be any oil, it could be any sort of commodities or metals. Then we talked about credit cards. What about crypto's role? I think you've said a number of very good points in the past. Is you know you could be using crypto as your hard asset, but we prefer to use it as a transfer across borders, which you know.
Crypto is by far the best way, or Bitcoin in particular. Bitcoin, maybe Monero, and other
Yeah,
privacy coins have got certain uses, and for transferring large amounts of money over borders is by far the best way.
yeah,
You definitely don't want to be going through the airport with $1 million worth of gold in your briefcase. I've actually done that in the past, like 20 years ago, and unfortunately back then it was
they
okay.
didn't
People
care, but now they would care.
you take it out, go through the scanner. And you get some curious glances. What's this? But I would never do it nowadays because it's going to end up getting confiscated
Yeah,
nowadays. Going to an airport with that. So don't take your gold through an airport. It's much better to use something like cryptocurrency to transfer
yeah.
large amounts of money over a border.
Mm.
So I would definitely say it's a great use. But at the end of the day, there's no question about it. Bitcoin's a risk asset. You look at a chart of the Bitcoin price next to the Nasdaq, and they move in tandem. So if the Nasdaq falls, the chances are Bitcoin's going to fall too. Of course, you can hedge this if you like the flexibility of Bitcoin, but you don't want to hold it as a risk asset. You can hold Bitcoin in a secure wallet and you can sell futures so that you have no risk. But it's a bit of a hassle to do that
Yeah,
constantly. But I'd recommend everyone has some Bitcoin. I certainly do, and I'd recommend everyone has some Bitcoin, but recognize that it's a risk asset.
yeah, yeah. And then we have mentioned a preference to Monero on occasion. Plus, Monero hasn't moved as much as Bitcoin. But I think what we're really saying there is a love for crypto, not as much as maybe some other people. You are more in love with the blockchain side of things because that's the serious thing of value. That's the thing that you can protect yourselves from tyrannical governments and people trying to seize your assets.
It gets you out of the banking system. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
that's the key point about cryptocurrency, but you just have to be careful because there are so many scams around. So I wouldn't recommend anything other than the major coins and use it as a tool rather than an investment. I would say.
Yeah, yeah. And then on the other side of it, there's OTC dealers that would deal, you could go across the border and then you could basically meet someone or speak to someone, do a transfer in crypto to them and then receive your Bitcoin or this could be done in gold because there's loads of gold high street dealers. Obviously you want to find and research the best ones in your area. I mean, actually, I think I saw a clip of Andrew Tate talking about how he does it with crypto and meets an OTC dealer in
Yeah,
Singapore
yeah,
and
I mean,
Japan.
yeah, I mean, you can do that. I mean, I've done it in London, for example. I've transferred Bitcoin to buy gold and gone along to the gold dealer in London and picked up the gold coins. And it's a very easy transaction to do.
So you're sending And then how does, obviously people might get quite nervous sending, you know, their crypto to an address. Maybe you're there in person with the person, but if it's an established building or
I
whatever,
think the key point is use a reputable dealer,
yeah,
use a reputable gold dealer
yeah.
to do that particular transaction.
Not a car park in the middle of
Don't go to some
nowhere.
internet sites and do it there. Go to someone with a physical
Yeah,
address
yeah,
and make sure you're sending it to the right address. Do a small transaction first to
yeah,
make sure that they're trustworthy.
yeah.
And then you can do larger transactions if that's what you want to do. Of course, you can do those transactions in reverse. You can sell your gold and get crypto back if you need to transfer money across borders, which is it's much easier that way. You can also arrange to have your gold
Safe or
leave your
whatever.
gold in a big city like London and collect it again in Switzerland and just do an
That's
exchange
true.
that way. So there are ways to do it if you want to do it. I mean, you just don't just don't do what I did in the past and have
Your
a
home.
lot of gold in your briefcase going through the airport security nowadays. It's just
Yeah.
the world has changed.
Yeah, yeah. And I think the key is the trust of those reputable dealers. And nothing here is illegal as well. I mean, you don't have to be meeting someone in a car park and sending them Bitcoin over a phone and they give you a briefcase. This is all legal stuff. You could be going to doing research on high street dealers and going there. So yeah, I think that's some really good information that people should be utilizing.
I think the key point is it is possible to live outside the banking system, outside the financial system if you choose to do it. It's a little bit more inconvenient, but it can be done.
Yeah, yeah. And basically what we're saying here is we're using the dollar, betting against it, but we're never actually owning it as it goes to zero. But what we're not suggesting is we still love stocks. Like we've done a portfolio allocation video in the past, and we've said that still 20% roughly of your wealth should be allocated to stocks. And
Yes,
I mean
I
that's
mean stocks are another way to get out of the dollar. Particularly, obviously U.S. stocks are priced in dollars, but you could have stocks in other currencies. But stocks are they have real assets, real revenues, real tangible value behind them. If you
yeah,
buy Apple stock, for example, you have that brand name, you have the
yeah,
revenues of that company, you have
mm,
the future inventions of that company. So you've got something that's real and
yeah,
tangible. It's not like buying US dollars. The problem that I have with stocks today, I still recommend that people buy stocks, and
mm,
I do it myself. But nowadays, it's more difficult to hold stocks outside the system. You try and
yes,
get a share certificate issued to
great
you
point.
today, and to hold the stock outside your broker. And it's even 20 years ago it was possible. Now it's technically possible, but very difficult.
Yeah, I mean that links to a point I made in another video with a broker that I have had experience with that are holding some of my shares at ransom and trying to get me to pay a yearly fee that I haven't even been using the account for 5 years. It's a joke, and you can complain to the financial ombudsman or whatever, but they're in with the system as well. They're not really going. They're
No,
not.
it's very difficult to get paper assets out of the system, and
Yeah,
stocks, while they're great for the reasons that we said, you're buying these real tangible assets that the
yeah,
business is own. But how do you own that outside the financial system? And you really it's almost impossible nowadays. It would be great, and I don't know why this hasn't been invented. It'd be great if you had a blockchain for stock transactions that was out with the financial system, so that you could be
yeah,
buying Apple shares for Bitcoin and they could be transferred anonymously to you, and you could transfer those shares. I could press a button and transfer them to you, and it was all anonymous. I mean, that would be the perfect financial system. But of course,
yeah.
they've got all this anti-money laundering bullshit nowadays that it's probably breaking all sorts of regulations to do that. But that's the way it should be. That was the way it would be in a rational world.
But I think also what we're also saying with the shares side of it is basically it would be more allocation if it wasn't for how closely tied it is to the financial system. But we're also saying that shares, people have this idea that shares also are dollars. Shares are not dollars. There's a whole point of shares is they're not dollars. That's why they exist. They are a confidence in a public company who have their own, revenues, profits, and margins.
Yes,
That's a
you
confidence
buy
in that rather than a confidence in something
exactly. You're
else.
buying part of the underlying asset. So even if you want a leverage position on gold, for example, that we talk about buying physical gold, but if you want a leverage position on gold, you buy the gold miners because you're then buying
Yeah,
the gold that's still under the ground that
yeah,
they're still pulling out, and they're you get a gold mining company that's producing gold at $1,000 an ounce or less, and they're selling it for 3,500 or thereabouts today. Then
yeah.
you've got a very profitable business, and the increase in volume in gold is probably still not fully reflected in these gold mining stocks. So that's
Yeah.
another way to play gold, and you can make that argument for many other commodity type stocks as well.
Yeah, and I think that also you're basically sort of saying, oh, here's the strategy, technical analysis, swing trading with leverage positions within, your shares and your brokerage, but you're doing that very briefly to just have a bump in bump in wealth value increase to then move back across into the spot, into the physical hard asset of the metals or the the crypto that you've chosen to be your
Yes, as we said, you have your own gold standard, Bitcoin standard, whatever you choose, or you can have a combination. But don't use fiat money. But it doesn't mean that you can't still be investing the money that's held within your personal gold standard into other assets that are going to increase in value. You can speculate with that money the same as you can if you've got US dollars.
And technical analysis as you've done and I've done and we've shown on the channel. This is the last point that we've hit every point that our channel covers. You can actually time the market when people tell you you can't. You absolutely can. The people telling you can't are the blue chip companies, the bureaucrats, the politicians. They're saying, "Oh, just stick it in, keep putting it in." Dollar cost average. Dollar cost averaging is very good, but there are definitely ways using technical analysis to time.
Technical analysis does work. It will help you mitigate the risks. It will help you time the market, and it will increase the probability of a successful trade if you know what you're doing.
Even in some of these assets like gold, as it maybe comes back to its 200 moving average and things like that.
Please don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on post notifications, and join our Discord chat room linked in the description so you can see these plays and get in these opportunities when we do.